They say some stories are just whispers in the dark, meant to be forgotten. But in the quiet town of Ravensbrook, there's one story you can't forget, because it won't let you. The story of the Hollow Man, a figure who appears in the window of any house that tries to erase him. For years, he was just a legend, until Elena Ward moved into the old Harper residence. The house stood at the end of Birchwood Lane, tall and thin, with dozens of windows like glass eyes watching the world. Elena, a 27-year-old artist, saw it as a lonely giant, a perfect escape from the city's noise, a quiet place to paint. She arrived as the sun was setting, the house greeting her with a groaning door and a rush of cold air that smelled like damp earth. Inside, it was old but charming, filled with forgotten furniture. It felt right, almost. Standing in the living room, she noticed something strange in the window's reflection. As she moved, her reflection lagged for a split second, like a delayed video feed. She brushed it off as exhaustion, laughing nervously. But when she looked again, her reflection smiled back at her, even though her own lips hadn't moved. By the third night, she'd grown used to the house's quirks, the groaning floors, the rattling pipes. But a new sound broke the silence. As she painted by the window, a faint tapping started. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the upstairs hallway window. She went to check, but saw nothing outside, only the dark woods and her own pale face in the glass. But something was wrong. Her reflection's eyes were hollow, just two black pits. She gasped and stumbled back. When she dared to look again, it was normal. That night, the tapping continued, slow and deliberate. She told herself it was a tree branch, but there were no trees close enough to touch the windows. 2 days later, she found an old photo album under a loose floorboard. It held faded pictures of the Harper family who had lived there before. But in every photo, the face of their young daughter was blurred, as if the camera itself refused to see her. On the last page, a shaky note read, "She saw him first. He comes through the window." That night, she covered every window with thick curtains. But she woke around midnight to find them all drawn open. And there, in the reflection of the glass, stood a tall, hollow-faced figure right behind her. She spun around. Nothing was there. When she looked back at the window, the figure was gone. But her own reflection was now slightly out of sync, as if it was waiting for her to move again. The next morning, she met her neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Claiborne. "You're in the Harper place," the woman said, her voice wary. She told Elena about the Harper's little girl, Lucy, who disappeared one winter night. "Her parents said she'd been talking to someone in her window for weeks," Mrs. Claiborne whispered. "A man no one else could see. He promised to show her what was on the other side of the glass. After Lucy vanished, her father claimed the man lived in reflections, and if you looked too long, he'd trade places with you." That night, Elena couldn't resist. She began to paint the man from her reflection. He was gaunt, empty-eyed, a hollow shell with skin as pale as glass. The longer she painted, the more the brush seemed to move on its own. When she finished, she froze. In the painting's background was her own living room, perfect in every detail. And in the painted window, her reflection stared out, wearing a wide, unnatural smile. At 3:12 a.m., the tapping returned, louder, closer. Elena crept to the window. Outside, nothing, but her reflection was moving. It raised its hand and pressed it against the glass. Without thinking, Elena lifted her own hand to match it. The moment her palm touched the cold surface, a whisper slipped through the glass. "Let me in." Elena screamed and stumbled back. When she looked again, the reflection was gone, replaced by the faint handprint of a child on the glass. By morning, she knew she had to leave. She packed her car, but the engine wouldn't start. Back inside, she found every mirror in the house had cracked, and in each broken shard, she saw a different version of herself, smiling, crying, screaming. Her painting had changed. The hollow man was gone. In his place stood her. But her reflection in the painting's window was still smiling. Then she saw it, a shape in the real window beside the painting. Tall, thin. A pale, hollow hand reached out from the reflection and grabbed her wrist. The world turned cold and colorless as she felt herself being pulled not through air, but through glass. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Claiborne saw lights on in the Harper house. Peering through the window, she saw Elena sitting at the piano, but her eyes were empty, like frosted glass. In the window's reflection behind her, a tall man stood watching. He smiled. Then, slowly, Elena's reflection turned its head, even though the real Elena hadn't moved. The hollow man was watching through the glass, waiting for the next person to look too long. The house on Birchwood Lane still stands today, and if you walk by after dark, you might see a woman at the window, but she's not looking out. She's looking at you. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another journey into the dark. Stay safe out there.